Right, today I thought I would do a little bit of a talk about when I was young and when I was diagnosed with TB, with tuberculosis. This was in the 1930s, and I think there was quite a lot of TB around in those days. I had it in the stomach. I mean, most people would get it in the lungs, in the chest, but mine was in the stomach, so I was always quite ill and had diarrhea and stomach problems and always getting something wrong, some illness or other. So, yeah, I was diagnosed and went off to a sanatorium at Meathop, which is in Cumbria, used to be in Westmorland, and it's near Grange-over-Sands, top end of Morecambe Bay. So that was the sort of area. I think it was set up there because of the fresh air and the local spring water. And it would get plenty of fresh air because it was up on a hill, looking out over the Morecambe Bay, leading out onto the Irish Sea. So that's where all the prevailing winds come from. So I can see why it was set up there. Set up in 1900, I think. But I'll go into a bit more detail on the sort of setup of the place and the layout and the history next time. I'm going to do this particular video in two bits. And first of all, today I'll just do a bit about the sort of memories that I have of the place. One of the problems I had was that I know that I was in there for quite a long time. I was never quite sure how long. And of course, the people who would know are no longer with us, so I got in touch with the Cumbria Archives in Kendal, and they were extremely helpful. And it seems from their records that I went in at the end of August in 1936, which would be about 1 week after my 7th birthday, and came out in, I think, the 14th of May in 1937. So I was in there for nearly 9 months, which for a 7-year-old boy is, yeah, a long time. The memories I have of it were, we were in wards, the boys were in wards, two boys to a ward, bed at either end of the ward, and the ward had sliding doors and opened up onto a sort of veranda with a glass roof. It was more like a sort of covered walkway. And those sliding doors were hardly ever shut. I think they only closed them when the rain or the snow was blowing in. And one of the things I do remember was the cold and the snow. I can remember sitting up in bed and watching the snow slide off the glass roof of the walkway, sliding big slabs and slopping onto the garden below, obviously when the snows were melting. And of course, looking into the records, there was actually quite a serious snowstorm in the February of that year when there were drifts of, into the teens of feet deep. So it was quite a cold period, shall we say. Another memory I have was the 2 days before I came home, I remember we had a big bonfire and fireworks in the grounds. Never knew what that was about till I did a bit of research, and it must have, well, until I got the dates of when I was in there, and it must have been the coronation of George VI. So that was another memory. Third memory, food. Food generally was pretty good, I think. I never really thought much about it, except occasionally, or quite often as I remember it, we would have tripe and onions. Now, have you ever had tripe and onions? Well, don't. I've never met such unchewable material that's supposed to be food. It was just awful. I just hated it. And though in those days, of course, if you got a plate of food in front of you, you were supposed to eat it. I remember once I actually fell out of bed on purpose, hoping I would be injured and not have to go to get this dinner. So that was one other memory. We had church services. That was something we had to do as well. And the other memory, which it always confused me, was I said that we boys were in the wards and the men were in huts in the grounds. Huts with a lot of ventilation, shall we say, quite primitive. And one night it was dark. The two we were in our beds in the ward, and I think a group of men, I think 4 men, came into the ward and divided. We had some headphones, you see. The reason why they came to the wards is that we had headphones and you could listen to the radio, the wireless as it was then. They didn't have those in the huts. So they came in, split the headphones between them, so they had one each, and listened to what I've always thought was a boxing match from America. I always thought it was Tommy Farr fighting Joe Louis. Now, Tommy Farr was a very famous Welsh heavyweight boxer who fought a lot of all these sort of international competitors and did very well. He was very popular, sort of Henry Cooper of his day, I guess. And that was a big event when he fought Joe Louis. But it wasn't. The dates don't work out. It might have been a fight that Tommy Farr had with a German called Max Baer, but that was in London. But then it could have been because as a small boy, perhaps once it got dark, it was any time of the night. So, you know, it's just memories. So, right, those are the memories. Next time, I think I'll go into more of the history of the place and when it was set up and the size of it and the sort of treatment of what went on there. So stuff that I've managed to get from archives and from a visit there that we did one summer. Okay, so we'll leave it there for the moment and then hope to see you again for the next bit.